announce our keynote speaker for today, Ms. Dominique Roy. Ms. Roy is a Texas native from Fort Worth, Texas. She's a graduating senior at Prairie View A&M University, where she'll receive her Bachelor's of Science in Political Science with a minor in Legal Studies. In her years at Prairie View, she has been active on her campus, organizing events, marches, and fighting voter suppression. She is currently the Vice President of Governmental Affairs for the Student Government Association. After graduation, she will further her education to receive her PhD in African American Studies. With many aspirations and efforts in community activism, her ultimate goal is to become a political commentator for CNN and a professor. She has a deep admiration and love for the Black community and will use her platform, life, and efforts to bring justice, security, and self-awareness to her community. Through her newly founded nonprofit Redemption 13, she will use this as a tool to help newly released inmates find jobs and security. Ms. Dominique Roy.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction and for that reading my bio. Thank you so much. Again, like it was stated, I have a deep admiration for the Black community and for Black history. So again, this is my first time as a keynote speaker, so I am very thankful for my first time to be given honor to the great Martin Luther King Jr. For this observance, we took the last book of Dr. King's life, where he wrote his last book, close to his life, Where Do We Go From Here? Community versus Chaos. And in that book, I wanted to express the time period of what was going on during that time. With community versus chaos, you can start to see the different language of Dr. King. You start to see that his rhetoric starts to change. The Dr. King from 63 is completely different from the Dr. King of 1966. With community and chaos, you can understand that it's like a tug of war that goes on when you try to compare community and chaos. With examples such as examples for community in 1963, when Dr. King made his famous address, I Have a Dream speech, you can see that within the Black community, it was so much spirits of hope. It was so much spirits of believing in the American dream and believing that they can be a part of this American dream. So during that period, it gave Black people a sense of hope and a sense of reassurance that we can make it to this point. And with the I Have a Dream speech that happened in August of 1963. So when you're speaking of community, chaos is shortly there right after, because in September of 1963, that's when those 4 little girls that was victim of the Birmingham church bombing, and that to the Black community was an answer to the March on Washington. Again, another example is with the Nobel Peace Prize, when Dr. King was awarded that in December 1964. Again, that was a feeling of reassurance. It was a happy time for, of course, Dr. King and the Black community, because it showed, again, reassurance that the fight and the struggle that they were doing was for something, that the fight of nonviolence was proven right in that award of Dr. King, because Dr. King did not just receive that award himself, he received that award for the Black community. But with that triumph victory, you come with Bloody Sunday right after that, the bloodiest of victims of the March to Selma for the Voting Rights Act. That was, of course, the famous march of the late John Lewis, that was suffered great beatings of that march to try to fight for the Voting Rights Act and for Black people to have the right to have protection to vote. So when you're again looking at community, you have to understand that chaos and community is right with each other. So when you come into modern day times, where when we elected our first Black president, we believed as a nation that we have overcame this racial barrier. We believe that we are over racism, that we elected the first Black man, so we can't be racist anymore. But sadly, in his presidency, we still saw racial issues. We witnessed Daniel Roof walking into a predominantly Black church and slaughtering 9 Black people. We saw neo-Nazis marching in Charlottesville and expressing white hatred towards Jews and Black people. And that was still going on even in the presidency of the first Black president. So we can't acknowledge the fact that we have made it somewhere without understanding where that we came from. So now when we go to the question of where do we go from here, you have to understand that Dr. King was in the middle of community of chaos. He wasn't just a revolutionary dreamer, he was also a revolutionary thinker. He had to always re-examine his own beliefs. He was always challenging himself of his beliefs and the climate of the people around him. Also, with the people around him was criticizing him as well. Again, the love that we had for Dr. King at 63, the same people that was praising him at 63 was also criticizing him greatly in 66 down to his assassination in 68. So when asking where do we go from here, we see the shift of Black people coming from nonviolence to the Black Panther Party and the Black Panther movement of 66 to 68. Dr. King became more radical in his language. And in his last speech, before that was found on his desk on the day of his assassination, was titled, "Why America May Go to Hell." So you could see that where Dr. King was ending, he was turning more into speaking more about economics. He was speaking more about poverty. He was speaking out against the Vietnam War because it was more accessible to love the Dr. King that was speaking about dreams and was speaking about hope. But the more radical Dr. King is what is sadly silenced, and not a lot of people know about that Dr. King. So I urge young people to educate themselves on that period of Dr. King, that even with those criticisms, it was young people that were challenging Dr. King. It was young people that were challenging the way that Dr. King saw things. With the famous Kwame Ture that was formerly known as Stokely Carmichael. He became the chairman of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. But he advocated and he pushed the rhetoric of Black Power. And Dr. King understood the struggles of Black Power. He understood the meaning behind Black Power, but the naming Black Power was too close to the rhetoric of white power. So again, with that, he had to have young people to challenge his way of thinking, had to challenge his way of how to see things in the world. So as a young person and as a soon to be graduate, I want to push people to get involved. I want to push the younger generation to get involved and to tell them that and to show them that it's okay to challenge. It's okay to do things differently. You need to learn from your people, learn from Dr. King, learn from Stokely Carmichael. And while you're learning from these people, challenge it to evolve it into something different. The way of how things were handled in 66 and in the 60s is of course different from how we should handle things in modern day time. But without understanding your history and understanding where you come from, it's easier and better to make your people better in this day and time. So with this day, I really want people to not freeze Dr. King in the I have a dream period. I want people to educate themselves on the radicalness of Dr. King. I want people to fully understand that Dr. King was not just a nonviolent preacher. He was a revolutionary thinker, and he was a revolutionary person who fought and struggled for the emancipation of Black people economically, spiritually, and physically of that. So thank you very much for allowing me to be the keynote speaker. And I hope you have a beautiful day on and not day off. Thank you.